This video is brought to you in collaboration with WoWhead.com. Hello everyone! I was working on typing out some of the side quests for the Isle of Dorn, but I quickly realized that there's an interesting subject to talk about, which relates to established lore and some of the lore that's coming up. It's about the Earthen and the Curse of Flesh.
The Curse of Flesh has run rampant across Azeroth.
The Curse of Flesh originates from Yogg-saron manipulating events at Ulduar to break out of his prison. Starting with Keeper Loken, he worked on taking over his jailers. Loken was then manipulated into using the Forge of Wills to create more of their Titan Forged, and unbeknownst to Loken, Yogg-saron had added his Curse of Flesh to the machinery, tainting its creation matrix. Any Titan Forged created by the machine thereafter would fall victim to its affliction. Some would even spread it to previous generations of the Titan Forged. The Curse of Flesh would gradually spread and transform many of these infected servants into mortal beings of flesh and blood. Beings who the cunning old god knew could easily be killed. Titan Forged like Vrykul, Mogu, Mechanomes, Earthen and others. Titan Forged that are used to help defend, shape and maintain the world of Azeroth and its machineries. It's through the Curse of Flesh that we would see an evolutionary path in which, for example, Vrykul became the humans, Mechanomes became the gnomes, or the Earthen became the dwarves, while Yogg-saron had set out to weaken Azeroth's defenses. By giving these Titan Forged flesh, it made them more vulnerable to the old god's corruption, but in turn, it also created their own worst enemy. The Titans could seemingly never have imagined ways of fully getting rid of the old gods without destroying the world and its soul within. And so it would be these corrupted Titan Forged, once deemed by Algar the Observer to be so corrupted that the whole world should be purified. You know, until we knock some sense into him. That level of unacceptable corruption rose up together with alien forces, native forces, elemental forces, everything and anything that we had to throw at them, and it did what their creators were unable to do, rid the world of Azeroth of its old god infection. And now all that's left to them is their blood. Well, and a bunch of units, I suppose, like the Nerubians, not to mention that there's Xal'atath. Yeah, there's still plenty of void corruption going around.
The Black Empire has fallen. The old gods are dead.
I've always loved the dynamic when it comes to the Curse of Flesh. And looking at the Earthen of Algar, we can see that they still have their stone forms. There's no flesh to be found here, and yet there are fractures amongst their ranks. The original directive of the Titans is no longer followed by all of them, becoming crystal clear in a beautiful side quest, which is kind of what started off this script. I really wanted to show this off. It is called Remember Me, Earthen. The Earthen on the Isle were placed here by the Titans and the Keepers with a purpose in mind, a directive to follow, like maintaining the core way, keeping each other safe, repairs when needed. It was a well-oiled machine, until some of the Earthen started to realize that the Titans were silent. Stepping away from the oath sworn, they became unbound, living away from the capital and stepping away from their edicts and traditions. This caused a rift between the Earthen, a rift in their programmed way of life. In turn, the Earthen started to shut down. You see, the Earthen have memory crystals, but only so much storage space. Normally, they would go down below to upload the memories and refresh themselves, but stepping away from the others made this difficult for the Unbound. And their Great Vault, I believe this is where they would store their memories, is offline. So their time has become finite. Run long enough and their memory starts to override itself, forgetting those closest to them, forgetting who they were, their life once lived, until they shut down entirely. That's how we meet Urtago and Khorgron. Khorgron has been the caretaker of Morning Rise for a very long time. They can sense that their shutdown is approaching. Well, they call themselves the caretaker, but in truth, Urtago has been taking care of Morning Rise for some time now, and she doesn't mind. Khorgron is very kind, but the situation has gotten away from them. Morning Rise has been infested by the kobolds, who desecrate their final resting place. What to the kobolds look like statues ready to be plundered of shinies. To the Earthen, they're their former friends and loved ones that have taken their final place. Obviously, this will not stand. So we clear out the area, we shut down the tunnels, we reclaim stolen parts, and we place gifts to honor the memories of past caretakers. But to Khorgron, Morning Rise is a sad place, not one where he would like to shut down. But shut down in morning rise is tradition, Urtago replied. Did we become unbound from the Titans just to be bound by traditions? I have often walked the path between the outpost and the morning rise memorial sites. I recognize the ruts made by heavy steps, same as those who came before me. But as an unbound, I wanted to be free of traditions that lock me into performing the same duties day to day. I chose to be a caretaker, but I wish I had wandered the Isle more. I didn't really know how much time I had left. I would much rather shut down by the ocean southeast of here. There's a lovely spot there that I've wandered too often. Or, maybe Urtago is right. I'm just crumbling Earthen, who is losing their pebbles. If that's where Corcoran wants to shut down, then that is where we'll take him. But before that, he wants to craft an item that was meaningful to him. Before becoming an unbound, he was stonebound, work in the mines with a lantern in hand until he lost it in a collapse. He would like to forge a new lantern to guide him through these final moments. So we gather the materials, we help with the forging as it's becoming harder and harder for his body to move. I can feel it. It's like a shadow hanging at the edges of my memory. It is growing, encroaching on me. It is like a dark fog that shadows parts of who I was and who I am. He does still remember how to perfectly craft the lantern, and it's time. His memory is fading, quickly. So fast, in fact, that he becomes confused, one of the final symptoms before shutdown. He doesn't recognize us anymore, and runs away in fear. We look for his tracks, and we find his lantern. The lantern he crafted to guide him when he would be lost. The charred core illuminates the area with cool shades of blue. On its bottom side, a carving says, made by Corcoran and a dear friend. He doesn't recognize us anymore, doesn't even remember Urtago's name, but we let him know that she is waiting for him. Waiting for me? I must be important. It's a hell with tradition. If Corcoran wants to shut down at the shore, then that is what he'll get. The sound of the waves, the sand under its feet, it brings together what shards of memories he has left. But there are so many memories that he has lost. His inception, his first wandering of this land. Urtago is right. There's no other place that he would rather shut down than here in the waves. Now there is another tradition that they uphold amongst the unbound caretakers, where the master passes on the mantle to their apprentice. Figuratively, of course. And to do that, Corcoran needs a horn, which we get him, as well as some ashenfold, which they can use to perform a symbolic ceremony of cleansing. The master caretaker would face the apprentice, blow their horn, and the sound signified the passing of the torch. We hand him the horn, and, well, you might imagine that it's already far too late, his memory far too gone. Here, at the place that he lost so much, the old caretaker has a moment of clarity. He knows exactly what to do. I, Corcoran, bestow the title of caretaker of Morning Rise on you. I, Urtago, receive the title with honor. He always liked this spot, always wondered what was beyond these shores. Here, the ocean will erode his body and take him over the dark sea. Don't worry, his lantern will light the way. Rest, Corcoran. Goodbye, friends. And his body is hardened due to the shutdown. The once warm eyes are now locked in a gaze of wonder at the horizon, as his lantern sways with the gentle ocean breeze. This side quest hit hard, not gonna lie, and I hope that we're gonna get voice actor for this one. But beyond the emotional part of it, it also offers some interesting things to consider. Some of the dialogue makes it sound like they're extremely robotic in their functions and operations, which is something that we have seen before with the Keeper's creations, with the Titan Forged. The mechanomes of Northrend come to mind, where they're unmovable, unapproachable, and they purely stick to their directives, no matter what they might be. That brings us back to that curse of flesh, and how it seemingly gave rise to free will amongst the Earthen. A heart and mind that could think beyond their initial programming. Now looking at the Earthen right here, again, they don't have flesh. They're still far more robotic in operations, and yet we do see that spark of individuality. We see a spark of emotions similar to what others would experience. As Urtago describes it, like, I feel my gut gears grinding. That is a sign of anxiety. I can feel the buildup of pressure at my core. You outsiders call it sadness. It is hard for me to see Corcoran like this. We also see an urge for individuality as the Unbound, they stepped away from the edicts, their basic wiring of programming. Yet at the same time, they also build traditions. Sure enough, they're traditions of their own design and will, but the traditions all the same. Korgron looked fondly back upon his time as an oathbound working in the quarry. It was one of the everlasting memories which allowed him to forge the lantern. So what defines or bestows a soul, a spirit, a personality? Where is the line between robotic, mindless servants and beings longing for their own individuality, their own culture and lives? Traditions in which you honor the passing of friends, the passing of loved ones, forever stored in the memories. These Earthen show similar signs to having the curse of flesh, yet clearly not all the effects. So what is going on here? Considering this is alpha, that is still to be decided and explained. I imagine it could play a part when they become our allied race, but we do have an interesting report to look at. This was one of the earliest mentions of Algar. In a book that we found in the Ulduman Rivem dungeon at the start of Dragonflight, there is an observational report from Watcher Millennia on the Earthen, which says, "Fellow Watchers, when you were assigned to observe the state of our Titanforged subjects, who regretfully fell under the influence of flesh, the Keepers could not have anticipated the effort necessary to follow them as they spread throughout the world. I shall do my best to ensure your perseverance is recognized, but for now, you are to continue your duties until a new directive is authorized. It is apparent from your reports that the degree of transformation in Titanforged subjects is significantly diverse. There is no group in which this variance is more easily observable than the Earthen. While some have succumbed entirely to the melody, such as the Earthen who emerged from Ulduman and called themselves dwarves, others remain resistant, whether in full or in part. One particular notable variant can be found in the Earthen contingent dispatched to investigate the fissure detected in sector AR-938. For further details, search records related to geological anomalies. So, I've discussed this text with others as well, and you can definitely read it in multiple ways. But to me, it comes across as they've been keeping an eye on all variations of the Titanforge that got hit by the Curse of Flesh, and they have found different transformations, different variations, and clear examples can be found amongst the Earthen. You've got the dwarves that we know, and then now the Earthen dispatched to investigate the fissure. Is the fissure what will become the core way, the Titan passage that leads right into the core of Azeroth? If so, then where did the fissure come from? What created it? When did this happen? All things still to be discovered. In the course of their duties, these Earthen began to manifest behaviors analogues to those which would one day be apparent in the self-styled dwarves, despite the two groups being separated by vast swaths of time and distance. In fact, based on their origin dates, I could identify no correlate at all between these populations. Yet, while their behavior, language and demeanor show many similarities, for example, assigning sector AR-938 the colloquial name Algar, physiology, the two groups remain distinct. Is this distinctiveness due to the exposure to the unique qualities of the anomaly? Or is there another reason? We require more data before a conclusion can be reached. Their behavior changed in similar ways to our Earthen, yet their bodies did not. A pathway to the core of Azeroth, and Earthen that kept their crystallized bodies. There is another that obtained a similar-looking crystal form, Magni Bronzebeard, who went through an ancient Titan ritual and became the Speaker of Azeroth. They've got a name for him, or maybe for his kind. They call him a Tragar. All tradition and superstitions, Magni calls it. Now, trying to put this into a timeline is a little bit tricky, because we don't know everything yet there is to know. The Earthen of Algar said that they follow the programming of the Titans, their edicts. The Titans left Azeroth in the hands of the Keepers as they left and went into the Great Dark Beyond as they abandoned the planet. Only after that did Yogg-saron go to work and manifest the Curse of Flesh. The Curse of Flesh was transferable through the Titanforge themselves, so even older creations could be infected. We don't know if following the edicts of the Titans means that the Titans spoke directly to the Earthen, or if they're running off of all programming left behind. We don't know when, how, or even if the Earthen of Algar shielded their land, keep themselves hidden. Perhaps it's always just been open and just never explored. The report does indicate that they've kept an eye on the Earthen creations, so you can imagine that contact has been possible for quite a while. Contact in which the Curse of Flesh might have been transferred. A lot unknown, and a lot of possibilities that we could fill in here for the Curse of Flesh to be the reason for these Earthen to want their individuality and stop following the edicts of the Titans. Xal'atath and the Nerubians definitely seem keen on keeping us out of that core way, out of the pathway to Azeroth's core. So was this part of the old gods' plan all along? Did they plan for the Earthen to be hit by the curse of flesh so that they lay down their production so that this would no longer be maintained and nobody could go down below? Plans upon plans, this is the void that we're dealing with. Now the answer as to why their flesh didn't change, that could be because they were so close to the core of Azeroth itself. The data-mined Earthen racial is Azerite's surge and ingest minerals. If the Titan ritual was able to convert Magni, perhaps Azeroth's direct influence was able to stay off the old gods' corruption entirely and help them maintain their original form. This innate ability is perhaps why they've been such a strong defense against forces like the Nerubians. Will perhaps come into play later if Xal'atath and the Void's corruption is going to spread further. We could also consider the idea that it wasn't the curse of flesh at all, and instead it was actually Azeroth's influence that gave them their sense of individuality, stepping away from the machineries, stepping away from the planned edicts of the Titans aimed at keeping Azeroth under control. But that is a whole bunch of speculation. In essence, I wanted to show off this really well done side quest and throw out some information on the Curse of Flesh and the Earthen of Algar. What we have been able to figure out so far, and please keep in mind, Alpha will be Alpha. But at some point in time, a fisher showed up and the Earthen were dispatched to investigate. The area they went to was named Algar. They built their city, presumably built the coreway and a whole automatic system which should have allowed them to basically keep on operating forever, do what they were supposed to do. Then two major things disturbed these operations. The Sundering, which happened over 10,000 years ago, the end of the War of the Ancients, which sundered the land apart, but also damaged the machines that were supposed to keep them going, recharge them and store away their memories. And the Curse of Flesh, which did give them freedom, in a way, internally changed them from mindlessly following the edicts of the Titans to something more, similar to our dwarves, but without losing their crystalline form. This splits the Earthen into three major groups. We would have the Oathsworn, that held on to the edicts of the Titans, regardless of times changing around them. The Unbound, those that recognize the Titans are silent. They know that the Titans are not going to come back, so they carved out their own plans, wishes and traditions. And then in the middle, we've got some of the Machine Speakers, those that have strayed away from the edicts in practice, but not completely, and they're still trying to uphold the obligations to keep the Titan works functioning. A good example was a questline in which an Earthen, whose edict had them protect the memories of the others. While being unable to access their archive, this Earthen had to figure out some way to still perform their duty, and decided to archive people's memories and stories himself. Write them down, even going as far as just staying in town and performing this duty, as to not get new experiences themselves, overwrite the stories that they've learned. But if nothing changes, the Earthen will cease to function in the next 10 centuries. And that is pretty much the setup for the War Within and beyond. Of course, again, Alpha will be Alpha, but it is interesting to see how the events of the past, how they're still playing their role, and how the Curse of Flesh could also be considered a gift of freedom, away from the basic programming, and allowing things like emotions and friendships and love and free will to come into play. But yeah, you're now up to speed on the Earthen and the Curse of Flesh. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. Say this for more details on all the things that we talked about today, or just read up on it in your own time. Then check out the related WoW article in the description down below. And until next time, see ya!